I may not end up a 10 billionaire person, 10 with $10 billion, but I might teach the person that does. Yeah. And I might teach the person that then says, okay, if being an entrepreneur is really solving problems, I'm going to go after this problem. Let's do it, man.
You're ready to go? It's going to be an exciting night. I'm looking forward to it. So let me introduce myself first. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jamie Gruber. I am the host of the Multifamily and More virtual meetup, which we do once a month, typically second Wednesday of the month, but sometimes our guests have conflicts, so we moved it to the third week this month. What I'm really excited about, well, a couple things. One, I'll bring up our sponsor. The sponsor for tonight's broadcast is CF Asset Group. It's a multifamily holding company. Check us out. It's www.cfassetgroup.com. You can fill out a form at the bottom, get our business plan, and get a sense of what we're all about. If nothing else, if you're a multifamily investor, it might be a nice template for you to use in creating your own business plan. So feel free to check out our webpage, go to CF Asset Group's Facebook page and like that as well. cfassetgroup.com. Appreciate the support. Lastly on that, we do have a YouTube page, only a couple videos on there right now, but feel free to subscribe. More and more content is being developed there. So again, CF Asset Group and cfassetgroup.com. Second, and I'm excited about this, is I started this group in Michigan. This group has grown to about 430, 440 members or something like that, the Michigan Multifamily More Group. But thanks to some really cool people out there, we've been able to expand our reach on this. So we've got groups in multiple cities now. So let's list them out real quick. So we have the South Florida Multifamily and More Group run by Ben, the Cleveland Multifamily and More Group run by Tal, the Baltimore Multifamily and More Group run by Ian, the Minnesota Multifamily and More Group run by Matt, the Tampa Bay Multifamily and More Group run by Clayton, and lastly, and most recently, the Chattanooga, Tennessee Multifamily and More Group, which is run by Jason. So really, really cool to see. And this was intended tonight to be broadcast in all of the different Facebook groups. Unfortunately, Facebook wasn't cooperating with the live feed tonight, so we're doing it webinar style. Make it happen, right, Aaron? No matter what.
You know it.
Rule number 10, we call that. So, all right. So let's get into tonight. So I'm really excited. I consider Aaron a friend. He's a great guy. I think you guys are gonna be really, really impressed with what he's about to kind of drop on us. So Aaron is an entrepreneur. He left his job, I believe, in 2015. He can correct me on that. To live a bigger life, realized living a bigger life requires money. So he figured out a way to live that life while building his empire. And this guy is really, he's on fire. He's got travel hacking, credit, Ortis Academy, which if you were at the kind of preview of this discussion, I mentioned I really want to talk about, because as a parent, I think financial education is something that is so critical. And Aaron has developed something really, really cool for kids, and truthfully, probably even for adults to go through to really understand money. So we'll get to all of that. But let's start off with introducing Aaron. Aaron, anything else you want to say about yourself, brother?
Dude, I'm humbled by what you said in the first place. We could start with when I was born, and
sure,
we could get into it. But I'm glad to be here. Excited to share with you guys that are tuned in, and yeah, let's start a conversation.
Absolutely. So let's talk about your path here with credit. So you decided that you wanted to live big, and you didn't want to pay for that. Right? You didn't want to pay to live big. So, you got into travel hacking, but what's interesting is you got even deeper than that as far as understanding credit. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about maybe some things you learned, some myths, some truths, some whatever about credit. And actually, before you do, I forget this every month so far. For everybody out there, if you would, in the chat, as Aaron's going, drop some questions in there, and I will absolutely pick them up and make sure they get answered if they don't already get answered in the course of conversation. But drop some questions in there, and I'll get them answered for you with Aaron. But let's start there, Aaron. Tell us about what are some things that you've learned about credit? What are some things that make you passionate about this topic?
Man, so I love the question origin, right? Like what gets me excited about it? That's certainly different than like, how's it work? I think what drives me nuts is that there's such a like flood of information that's just wrong when it comes to credit and when it comes to money. And I don't mean like wrong, like matters of opinion. I mean, mechanically, the way that we're taught about credit isn't the way that it functions. And I got into travel hacking because I quit my job, and I was like, I will go see the world. And then I was like, shit, I don't have any money. And I think most of my life has been like, let me just figure out what it is I need, and then I'll figure out a way to get there. And whether it's the traditional path or not, like, I'll just figure it out. If it's the longer way, I'll go the longer way. But really, travel hacking started as, I can't travel. Let me figure out how to do this where I don't have to pay for it. And so now I've gone around the world several times. I probably travel, honestly, at least once a month, sometimes 3 or 4 times a month, where it's free. And last summer I went on this travel bender, man. I was in a new city every weekend for 4 months. So it was like just city after city after city. And much of that is because I worked my lifestyle around being able to be in places, but it all came from understanding credit, understanding money, and really understanding the game that's being played behind it. You know, this narrative of like credit is just really tough and dense to get through. So we hear pundits, we hear news, and it's just like, you know, you don't want to have all these credit cards, and you don't want to do this, and you don't want to do this, and this is how it works. And most of it's just really, really like incorrect. And, you know, I would say to all your listeners, you know, the intention of travel hacking, the purpose of moving the barriers from which we think about travel, it's not so much about mastering credit. It's about understanding the game that's being played and knowing how to win it, right? Like, you don't have to be a master. You don't have to go down the rabbit hole like I did, but I built an online course for travel hacking so that like anybody could say, look, I'm going to invest a little chunk of money. I'm going to get at least double back. Most people end up with 10X or 20X. And the purpose of it is, let me eliminate some of these barriers. When we show you the game, and when it comes to credit, it's not that complicated. It's actually pretty simple. But if we've been given all this wrong information, one of them being like, don't have a lot of credit cards. I got like 40 in a drawer, 40 active. I probably have 67 or 70 that I've opened. And most people, when they hear that, they're like,
what's your credit score? That's what's going through my head. What do you got, an 8 credit score?
Single digits.
Single digits credit score.
You know, and I think that's the response, right? It's just sheer silence and shock and awe. And it's fabricated based on the news that we hear. And my credit score's, you know, well above 790 at this point. And it dips and fluctuates, right? But if you understand how this works, it's really easy to say, all right, well, I can at least make this work for me. And in my case, and in the community that we've created it with travel hacking, all of us are about, look, the way it works for me is I never pay for a flight. That's what I'm interested in. That's what the community is interested in. And for those of you out there, like, credit is a very different game. It affects your mortgage. It affects the way, like, when you go to buy a car, it affects more than we think. Renting a car, they often check your credit. So there's so many things that it affects. And I've spent a lot of time in a lot of money categories figuring out the truth, like capital T truth, so that I can pump it out and just be like, look, here's the information that someone lied to you about. And here's some real stuff that can radically change your life. And that's my purpose, right? Is to uplift. Yeah. And it's just something I live through. It's just one vehicle that I do that through.
Excellent. And that's true. I mean, getting to know you, that's exactly true. You exhibit a passion for the things, for adding value. I mean, that's really what it boils down to, whether it's this or some of the other stuff we'll talk about. You love to add value. And I think you see the multiple return of that by doing so, right? It's a great way to live. So let's talk about, I am going to ask how it works. So 40 active credit cards. Like, growing up, it would be like, yeah, you don't want to have so many credit cards. It's going to tank your credit score. You don't want to have a whole bunch of inquiries on your credit. It's going to tank your credit score. You don't want to have too large a credit limit. It's going to tank your credit score. Like, all the things that I believe or know or have learned about credit, you just went the other way with, because 40 cards, even at a low limit, is a lot of credit, a lot of dollars in credit limit, right? So how does it work? If it's not all the stuff that I just said, then what is it?
You know, it's funny. Like, I have this graph in the travel hacking course that we go through. And I think what might be easiest to understand is, like, here are 5 things that make up your credit score. We don't need to talk about like percentages and get all technical, but just thematically, let's walk through this, right? So credit score, like, 2 big categories make up like 70% of your score. I think 65% of the score. So even just thinking of that, right? It's not this even spread. A lot of people think like, well, I know that they calculate these things, but they're all equal percentages. And if we know that two categories make up a big bundle, we can just kind of think about this differently. The way that credit is built really and manipulated is they look at the amount of credit we're offered and the amount that we use. So if I have a credit line of $5,000 and every month I spend $4,000, I'm using 80% of that at any given point. And the critical element to understand is that we want that ratio to be really small. And this is where most people get in trouble. Like their credit score can't build if they're spending and spending and spending. And regardless of the limit, it's all about that utility. So the utility ratio is what companies look for and what the credit, the score bureaus really monitor. So if you have a higher limit, it's only going to help that ratio, but it might not, right? I mean, I know people that spend 30 grand a month, and if they have 40 grand a month in credit lines, it's still a high ratio. You want that ratio to be like less than 10%. And I think that's one of the misnomers in a lot of this is, you know, this score is compiled in ways that don't make a whole lot of sense. And as we think through just that category, right, that's an immediate way that somebody could change their credit score. Yeah. Use less, right? So if you're out there listening, like, use less of your credit score, you'll be surprised at how quick this ramifies in your favor. The other category is your payment history. And that's a pretty obvious one. I think most people are pretty accustomed to that. But like, as an example, most people don't know that credit card companies don't report your payment late until it's 2 months. So they'll just collect your interest, but it won't go in your credit score unless you're like really, really late. But you have a lot of flex room. You just, again, got to understand the rules in the games. And, you know, I pay my credit card bill off every single month. I've got many of them, but I pay them like in full. I don't pay interest. One of the rules of travel hacking is never pay interest. And like, if those two categories occupy 65% of your score, just knowing that can radically change your behavior, right? So you might say, all right, Aaron, well, I've got, you know, $20,000 in credit that I've got access to. Yeah. You know, and every month I spend $5 grand. Well, cool. Drop that to $2 grand, right? Drop that to $8 grand. And you'll notice at how quick, and I'm not saying overnight, but you'll notice that the changes take place in your credit because that's such a whopper of your score. You know, the other components are smaller, obviously, but, you know, the mix, whether you have new credit, like those things, they definitely matter, but we're talking about a small fraction compared to like the big bulk of the pie.
Yeah. So you get a whole bunch of new cards. You read or see on Credit Karma, like my life of credit got smaller, and people freak out like, oh, I want a longer life of credit. But to your point, yeah, it's a factor, but it's not like the factor, the two big factors, right?
Right.
Right. We have this question. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I think it's important to add, like, payment history is certainly based on like a matter of time, right? The longer you have payment history, the better. But certainly, like, it's critical to keep in mind that there is like several different things affecting our score, and it just makes decisions easier.
No, that makes sense. So I had a question in the group. You addressed it to an extent, but I think I understand what's behind the question. Dave, you can let me know if I'm right or wrong. But the question was, what if you pay it off every month? I think what that means is if you only do have a $5,000 credit limit and you charge $4,000, but you pay it off every month, why would that hurt you, or how could that hurt you, or would it hurt you?
So think of it like this, Dave. You know, if I'm giving you a loan and I offer you like a revolving, credit cards are revolving lines. So if I give you $5 grand and every month you're burning, you know, four, I'm probably nervous about offering you more money. And that's all a credit score is, right? It's like a grade point average for your loan capabilities and how you handle it. And as you're burning through this, you know, I'm consistently going to monitor, like, how are you handling it? If you're using a lot of it over and over, I'm less likely to offer you more. And more could be a mortgage, more could be a new credit card, more could be a car. But that score is really just a continually updating evaluation of how you handle your money. And if I keep that number low, you'll also see when you keep that number low, you'll get all kinds of offers. Like they'll just call you and be like, hey, we upped your credit line. And part of that is being responsible with your money and being responsible with those lines is an indicator of your like worth as a loanee. Loanite?
Looney.
Loanite. Yeah, as a loanited on.
Like some like I don't know, Transformers stuff. Yeah, all right, cool. All right, so they see that you use 80% every month. So really a higher credit limit gives you lower utilization. So really at the heart of this is financial discipline, it sounds like, right? Like your program, I think, is predicated on the idea that you're not saying, hey, I've got $200,000 worth of credit and it's cool if I use 20% of that. So I'm going to use $40,000 a month and then, just pay the minimums every month. Like that's not what you're saying. It's not being loose with credit. It's understanding, one, that there's a discipline to what you have to do financially, but understanding that, the higher limits you have, if you're using it still in the same way, if I spend $2,000 a month, no matter what, right? That's my expenses per month. Better to have 50,000 in a credit limit than it is to have 4,000 in a credit limit.
Totally. Yeah. And I think you've read between the lines really well there, right? Like getting more credit helps you keep that ratio low. But this is a discipline game. And I think a lot of us, and I've been subject to this too. Like when we get access to more capital, we're like, oh yes.
Yeah.
We get this glare in our eyes. And we're like, I can buy more shit now.
Yeah.
And the trick is to really just look at credit like a foreign land that is cool from the outside, but we don't need to necessarily see it as home, right? Like the cash that we have that's what we have. And it's not a freelance license to just go buy and spend and up all of those things. So the discipline is certainly big, especially in, as we talk about travel hacking, like you have to be disciplined to even really go through travel hacking. And I try my best not to allow people with a ton of debt into travel hacking because it's just going to exacerbate the problem. But I think, for anybody, travel hacker or not, looking at credit with a degree of discipline across the board is just incredibly important. It's easy to slip down. And if we're talking about keeping utilization low, that means you should have cash, right? If you have more expenses than your utilization ratio would allow, then you should be using cash. And that's discipline 101.
Gotcha. All right. So the one other question, I don't know if this matters, but does it matter if you have 4 cards at $1,000 versus $4,000 on one card? Does number of cards matter in that, or just utilization of your credit?
For that part of the score, it's just how much credit do you have? How much are you using? So it won't matter the number of cards. Now that may affect things like payment history or other elements of your score, but for the most part, the component of credit utilization, it's irrelevant.
Okay. So how much you use and paying on time, you get those two right. That's 70% of what your credit score is going to be. So 30 cards, 80 cards, 50 cards, 200 cards. It doesn't matter as long as those two, I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but those two things are the big players in having that many cards and managing that much credit.
Yes. Yeah. They're your sluggers that'll knock it over the fence most of the time.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let's get into the fun stuff. So great. We learned about credit just now, right? So let's start with travel. Woohoo. Let's start with travel hacking. So maybe just start with what is it? And then, from your perspective, and then just go into kind of how you have utilized it as specifically as you can.
Sure. Let's talk about what it means, because I think so many people are like, oh, travel hacking, I don't want to hack anything. Travel hacking is really we're converting maybes and nos into yeses when it comes to the way that we see the world. And it's eliminating barriers between us and those maybes and nos, so that we can only see yeses. So for example, we love to think of travel in relationship to cost or time. And usually one is a direct corollary to the other. So if, for example, my buddy is getting married on a Sunday and I need to be back on Monday and I'm busy on Saturday, we're like, this doesn't make any sense for me to travel to because I've got to fly, and who would do that? And when you eliminate cost, that's not a question anymore. You just get on the plane in the morning, come home in the evening. It's like, it's all good. Yeah. And the other example that most people can probably share in is, because I did this, like, whoa, I can't go on that trip. That's way too expensive. Like, if it's going to cost me $1,300 to get there, I'm not going to have any money when I get there. And eliminating those two themes is really the birthplace of travel hacking. It's seeing the world through a lens that is barrierless and is based on us using our financial discipline and what we're already spending on really maximizing our usage of our money so that we get free flights. So generally the way that it works is I earn $500 to $1,200 a month passively by being a travel hacker. And I'll explain that in a moment. But what that enables me to do is like stack and stack and stack and stack. And for a couple of months, if I don't travel, or even as I'm traveling, I can stack up these amazing moments of travel bliss where I can just say, yes, I'm going to go. And when you take away the cost of the flight or the hotel or the Airbnb, like all of those, take away all of it, you can be anywhere for like pretty cheap, right? And like I'm a minimalist at heart, so I could land somewhere in the morning, stay all weekend, flights free, hotels free, and spend $65, right? Lunch, dinner, drink, lunch, flight. Like it's all gravy. And then there's like this layer of upping the way that we travel, where like I can now get in VIP lounges, and students that I've had have gone through the course, like now they get into lounges and like all these cool things. It changes your lens into stuff, right? Like, yeah, I was just in, where was I? Oh, I was just in Vegas, and I could have gone downstairs in the casino, bought lunch, got a coffee on my way to the airport, and then got to the airport and bought like a water. But I've got access to the lounge. So that, I mean, in Vegas, lunch would have cost me like $30, coffee $5. But I got to the lounge, and it's like a beautiful, decadent meal. It's free. There's Wi-Fi. There's like couches I can lay on. You know, it changes your travel experience. So I think the heart of travel hacking is, can you find ways to live through travel differently? The way the system works, generally what I'm doing is I'm maximizing my usage of credit to earn plenty of returns on travel. So anytime I spend money, I'm getting new points that allow me to fly free. And then, you know, that's sort of oversimplifying it. But then on the flip side, I also have a really good understanding for like, how do I book flights? How do I find these travel destinations? You know, sometimes it's, you know, I'm going to travel to a different airport. I'm going to travel through a different airport, right? There's like 3 local airports near me. So let me look at all these different like origin flights to get to the same place. But it's a lifestyle change and adaptation. If you've got the wanderlust of, you know, I want to see the world. I want to go see the country. I want to go see my friends. I want to say yes to like summer weddings. Like I'm 31. Everybody's getting married and popping out babies. So, you know, to be able to say, hey, I'm going to fly and see you is really valuable to me. You know, for families that, you know, may have like 17 kids, you know, flying is probably pretty onerous. So travel hacking is a way that you can eliminate those costs completely. And really like going through the system, I just made more mistakes. So now this course that I've got is like, here's the system. Here, just don't do these things and you'll end up winning. It's really, the exciting part for me is like, now it's not just my piece, it's now others, right? I think there's been 107 people that have gone through the course. And so now they're traveling free, and like, you know, it makes you think a little differently about the world when you're like, I'm just going to go.
Yeah. And,
you know, I never grew up thinking that way. It was so far and so out of touch. And, you know, I've traveled so much now that travel doesn't have this, like I don't travel just to travel. I travel with a lot more intent now, because I went on this bender last summer of just traveling to travel. And so a lot of that's changed, but I think for many of us, eliminating some of those barriers is a deep, deep want. And I think there are lots of people that are talking about it, probably others that are coaching and teaching about it. But all I know is that, you know, what we're doing, the community that we've started here is like, it's meaningful beyond what words can describe. When someone can go, there's one guy that like, he is going to Spain. He's not coming back. He's going to live in Spain. And like, the flight's paid for. Like, dude, he's starting a new life. And that's meaningful to me to help him do that.
Yeah. No, it's cool. Yeah. So I'm going to give you a couple of my stats from going through your course, but I think it's important. I think it's important. I know I didn't tell you this before because I wanted to do this on the broadcast, but it's important to note that there's a couple questions as well I'll get to, but it's important to note that I think, the idea here as you go through your course isn't like, hey, I got a card or two and I just build points on them. Like, I get the intro offer and I build points on them. It's a process of really targeting what you're going to do and understanding what the most valuable card is, or valuable, I guess card is that you're going to utilize to get there. So let me give you a couple of mine, right? So we're going to the Riviera Maya in July, I think. And we targeted the right card for points, right? It's 4 of us, me, my wife, my 2 kids, $167 for the whole thing, $167 for the whole thing. That includes the resort, which we had a bit of a package with that, but still it includes the resort. Our week will be $167 thanks to travel hacking. We're going to Boston, right, back home to see our family in September. So we got 4 flights back and forth, and then my wife and I got a room downtown in Boston for a night. We're dumping the kids with friends. That whole thing, all of that is costing me $33. And then when I go to Chicago in August, Amtrak back and forth business class. I think it's called business class, like the upgraded cabin or whatever. And 2 nights downtown, just a weekend away. That one's costing $0. So travel hacking works. And I know it may sound simple, but the idea here was we planned out our travel for the year. And then we looked at, all right, well, how are we going to get there? Amtrak card, right? And we figured out the best card with the best value points, everything else to get that. In fact, there's enough points on that to go back again, do the exact same trip back and forth again. So yeah, I think that's the point. Like, it's not just about, hey, I got this one card and I'm building points on it because I put all my money on it. It's targeting it. And I'll even throw this in, like, what we did was, and you'll get to this, I think, but like the rewards threshold that you have to meet, like a furnace went. Well, we went and found a card that we could put that furnace on rather than just cutting the check for it.
Nice.
You know what I mean? And that gave us, like, not having to spend money that we wouldn't spend anyway and still get the reward points. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you. A little surprise for you from going through your course. I don't bring anyone on here that I haven't experienced what they do or anything like that. I'm a believer in everyone's product or service or the way they operate. And you obviously are a big part of that. So anyway, I thought I'd throw that at you. The question in here is, are you using credit cards only for travel? And I think that goes to a question I had, which was maybe within travel, what are some things that you have been able to do? You mentioned the lounge. Like that's one thing people may not think about, but are there other creative things you've done with credit cards outside of just the pure travel that you could talk about?
Well, look, first of all, man, congratulations. I'm super proud, man. Like that's what fulfills me, man, is like you crushing it at this. I'm really glad the course was valuable. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I love kind of overviewing, what travel hacking can be more than just, the like face value of travel. I flew first class to Europe, and like what a difference, right? But aside from travel and upgrading travel, it can also go towards trains. You did it with Amtrak. Anything that can code as like a travel expense, and in many ways, like a lot of things can.
Can you do Uber?
You can. It depends on the credit card. Sometimes Uber will code as travel. Oh. I've certainly reimbursed, things like Airbnbs. I've reimbursed gift cards. So I've got like probably $900 in either American Airlines or Southwest gift cards. They're just kind of sitting around that have been travel hacked. And then, you can do hotels, you can do rental cars, you can do things like that, right? You could probably get away with like stuff at like ski resorts and some of those things that would code as travel, like
sure.
Adventure places that would pop up. When I travel, I tend to use the worth that I've built in travel for like the flight and all that, and I just go cash for the other things. But once you break into the space, like, so one of the coolest parts about this is that once you break into the space, you can kind of play and teeter with it when you have a good understanding. Like a lot of people are like, hey, here's how you travel hack. You just get a credit card and you get the points and then you go for travel. Like what we've built is like, look, let's understand the game. Let's understand how this works. And then you can apply this in whichever way you want. You can take it as far as you want. So there's one guy that he basically travel hacked the house. So he got a credit card, got the limit high enough, bought a house, flipped it, sold it in like a short period of time or something, and just cashed out like, 30,000 points.
Oh.
And it may have been more than that, but he basically leveraged the system that we were using to get to the ability to buy a house.
Yeah.
And, so a lot of people are doing kind of creative things. People are finding, I guess you could probably use it on Turo. That's probably a travel site. Kayak, like places like that, you can buy more than travel stuff, right? On Kayak, you can do like experiences. On Airbnb, you can do experiences. So there's a wide array of things that you can cover. But I think anytime you're learning something new, and especially given our timidity when it comes to credit cards, a lot of times, it's really important that you like base really hard. You have a good foundation, so that you don't end up slipping and kind of masquerading that it when you need to understand it, right? But so many people are doing some cool things with it, and to hear, like, I'm still ringing on your story, man. Like that just that made my day. It made my day.
No, it's cool. Like I said, I jotted that down earlier. I was like, yeah, let me just drop this on him at some point in the conversation. So let me ask you this, if you could recommend to everybody, if you're able to, I don't know if you've looked at it recently, but there's one card, I'm sure there are a lot, but if there's just one card that you would say, hey, what is the card? If I had to go, what is it like? If I had to go on an island and be with one other person, same thing. If you had to go there with one card, what would that card be and why?
It always depends on what someone's looking for. But for me, the top card is the Amex Platinum, hands down. So it's got a really hefty annual fee. It's like $550, I think. But it just like quickly melts all of that with the benefits. So every year you get $200 in Uber credits. I use Uber a lot, so those wash away quick. Sure. So that knocks it down to $350. You get $200 a year in travel credits, so that knocks it down to $150. Right, already you're doing pretty well. You get access to all the VIP lounges, and like Amex has Centurion lounges. Like these lounges are flipping unbelievable. What I was in Vegas was a Centurion lounge, so it's like this massive space in an airport. It's probably like 3,000, maybe 4,000 square feet. It's got like fresh food that's like chef made, drinks, like you can drink whatever you want. You don't pay for it. There's Wi-Fi. There's like couches, beds. It's amazing. And that's one of the perks. But you also get upgraded at Hilton. You get upgraded at like several different places like Hertz and some of those other like car rental spots. And they're consistently adding a lot of value on. I mean, you also get like a bonus. It's the Amex Platinum Melody, and you get a lot of different perks with it. But the main thing for me is that like I know hands down, like every time I'm going to use all of these benefits. And for some people it might not be worthwhile. Amex points are pretty universal, so I can transfer them to like Delta and other places and kind of like masterfully dance them through whatever kind of travel hack I need. But it's a phenomenal card. I highly recommend it. I could probably drop a referral link for people that want to get one.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
But it's a great card. And I think, it is important to think about like, okay, what do I want? Like if you travel for work and you just have miles and miles and miles, like don't get a miles card for flights, get a miles card for hotels, and then now you're good.
Right.
Or, I love being on a train. I don't know what it is. I love being on a train.
That's fun.
And so finding ways to get on the train more is a great thing for me. Right. But that might not be for everybody. I think the Amex Platinum though is more about like kind of the travel bubble that you live in and really upgrading that.
So I know a lot of cards are like, $3,000 in 3 months and you get 50,000 points or something like that, right? Do you have a sense, maybe you do or don't, but do you know what the value of 50,000 points is just generally? It probably varies, but what's 50,000 points worth?
The easiest way to do is chop off 2 zeros. It's about $500.
So you're saying pretty much if you open a card, and like you mentioned, so this Amex Platinum card, right? So maybe it doesn't have the points, but as an example, you've got all these perks and you're targeting, hey, I'm going to go to Vegas, airport back and forth. I can use this lounge. I can save a little bit of money there and, upgrade my rental car because I want to live like a king in Vegas, all that stuff, right? So you target that card because you're going to go to Vegas as an example. The amount that you spend on the card, essentially, if you spend that $3,000 and you get 50,000 points, you're pretty much getting $500 for every 3,000 you spend.
Yep.
Right. I mean, so that's what, I don't know, what is that? 20%? I can't even do the math on that. 1 out of 6, whatever. One
it's like 18%, man. And so, this is like the wild thought, right? So people are always like, my course is like, it's like $220, right?
Yeah.
And I get a lot of inquiries where people are like, hey man, like, can I have this course for like $10? And I'm like, look, you put in 220, you're going to get at minimum 500. Right. But
yeah, if
you know the system, like you can end up just flipping this out every 3 months where you're just like, pow, 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 $2,000 this year, pow, 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 $4,000 next year. And, it's funny to think about it that way because it ends up earning me about 18% on every single dollar I spend. I get 18% back.
Right. Where are you going to get that? Yeah. And this is,
crazy.
This is an investor group, right? So, when you talk about return, that's what resonates. And really, I look at investors as having two things very much in common. One, they're all mindset focused, right? Investors, they read books, they think through all that. And the other part is they're in it for a lifestyle benefit at the end, right? And you're offering that lifestyle benefit with what you're talking about with travel hacking and everything, which is great now versus after you have, 100 units or 200 units. But the other part of that is you're offering an 18% return on anything that you target, right? So it's, man, it's fascinating. And yeah, there's a lot of really, really good information in your course, well laid out, the video series that you have, the sections that you go through. It doesn't take long to get through, but, and there's some really good nuances in there that people just wouldn't think of until you go through a course like yours. So, yeah, man, I think it's amazing. And the value that you get in return alone, that 18% return, whatever that is, I think that's the right number, is phenomenal. There was somebody in here saying that they're using credit cards, Austin, Mr. Linney, to buy furniture for some Airbnb properties that he has and then gets the points and cash back. So, using that for purchases they're going to make anyway, right? To buy these things and then they get points on the back end of that. There was one other question here from Matt, I believe. Can you acquire points too fast that you can't use them before they expire?
I'd say if you can't burn your points fast enough, you got a lifestyle problem.
Yeah. Right.
If you have the ability to travel somewhere and you can't get away, you got a deeper issue than the points and the money. And I think, look, as we continue to talk about lifestyles and travel hacking, like it's important that we talk about like, what's the point, right? And in understanding that we are really deeply like driven by our work is, I get that. It's so important. I work super hard. I work all the time, except for when I'm not, and then I'm off. And I try my best to really not live in balance, but live in harmony. Like never will the scales be equal, but I think some points do expire. It's a reality, but I would say that I think the major brands that do it, like if you use your points once in 2 years, it just resets the timer. And if you're really itching and you can't get away, call me and we'll talk about like the deeper issue, because the deeper issue is you can't find a way to disconnect, and that's not the lifestyle that is travel hacking. It's also not a lifestyle that's healthy. So I'd be happy to help anybody that's struggling with that. And I coach a lot of business clients that are going through that, right? They're like, I got points, but I can't get away. And we're like, points don't matter. This is about your lifestyle. You got to fix that first. Let's get to the root of it.
No, I agree. Right. It's you find a reason, right? Find a reason to get away. There's gotta be, you've got the points there. It's not going to cost you much. Just figure it out. Actually, I had that happen a few years back before I really got into the whole travel. I just happened to accumulate points and it was going to expire. And I was like, all right, let's go somewhere. Right, let's do something. And, we ended up using them. So, and
you can always like you can book it, 6 months down the road, you just got to spend it. So never a bad problem to have. So yeah, I think it's just mindset, right? It comes back to mindset.
Yeah. Talk about like, so I've heard a few people talk about like, and I'm sure you've heard this many, many times over the course of things, like the credit card companies are cracking down. They got this travel hacking game, figured out, and they're starting to get rid of benefits, or they're not doing what they used to do, or whatever the case may be. So it's sort of a two-part question. Like, what is the value to them? And then also, is there any value to them? And then what is what do you say to that the whole idea that things are cracking down, that, travel hacking is going away?
All right, look, there certainly are like things that are changing because banks and things like that are picking up on what people are doing. But here's the reality, right? And I don't necessarily like this truth, but credit is a really messed up system in the States, right? It's like a wall for so many people that they just can't get past, right? If you're like formerly incarcerated, or you've like gone down the wrong path right after high school, like it's really hard to recover. And it's used to evaluate people in ways that I don't think it should be evaluating them in. That said, again, it's about understanding the game and knowing it. The travel hacking windows, like some of them have changed. I thought it was going to go away a long time ago. It didn't. And a lot of the noise is it's going to go away. But if you look at a credit card company, they make so much money off of us using the card, even if we're taking away like these travel rewards. Like there was a big article published by Chase that was like, hey, they have a huge liabilities column because they owe all these travel points. But if you think about it, right, credit cards double dip. So they collect money when we pay interest. They also collect money from the merchants, right? So they're earning even when we're not paying extra. And I think I remember looking up, like, I think it's in the course too, like the lifetime value of an average credit card user is like $7,000. So for all of us that are travel hacking and like collecting these points, I mean, the credit cards company is still making money on it, but there's also like hundreds of people that are mismanaging this stuff. That's why I'm so keen about like, look, if I know that you have a lot of credit card debt, like this isn't the place to like be playing around. This isn't your playground. Like, come back in a little bit. But I think the root of that question comes back to like the credit companies win when we have their card. And this is just it's just marketing, right? If I bring you $7,000 and it costs me $500, that's ROI positive, baby. Like, I'm in. And especially to any investor, like that's a really good margin. Even if you bring me $600 and I spent $500, I'm still positive.
Yeah.
So this is just an acquisition strategy for them. And, we are the select few that like figured it out. And we're like, all right, well, look, if you want to sell me, I'll buy and I'll bite and I'll win.
Yeah. I mean, as many as I think you talk about this a little bit in the course is, the shift, right? Like certain cards are going to do certain things and certain rewards are going to kind of be the norm. And then I think you say it often and they're like, hey, look, based on where it is today, meaning it adjusts, different cards and different companies give bigger rewards and, fees go up, fees go down. I mean, I'm getting a ton of offers still that are actually even better than what I was getting a year ago in some cases, right? Like they come in the mail all the time, 150,000 points versus 50 or 100,000 points for a card that has a $99 annual fee sometimes, or $0. So yeah, I think the point there is that I don't think it's going away. I think that it's more that, you just have to, like anything else, right? If a tax law changes, you figure out, okay, well, how do I take advantage of the new tax law? It's the same thing here. When one element of hacking goes away, another element pops up, right? Somebody else is going to do something different and you have to just sort of, read those tea leaves. And I think you would do a good job in the group of putting stuff out there, like $49 flights to Maui and, things like that people may not, we're just not tuned into that. And we're busy. This is what you do. So you give value by providing, hey, check this out, check that out. If you buy this, you get a companion pass for a year, it's $50, whatever it was. But a lot of value that you add in that way, and having an expert like you on your side will really help you win at this travel hacking game in one way or another. So I don't know, just something I want to
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So before we leave this topic, you mentioned it a minute ago, I don't know if it is the one or if it is not the one. Can you talk about call it like your most, if Greece, if it was or wasn't, was that your most epic trip? And if so, can you give us a little detail on that, or do you have a different one?
I do have some epic trips, but I think to paint the picture of travel hacking best, I'll talk about a different one. So I was out in Oakland And I was going through ayahuasca, which is a whole different story, but I was out in Oakland for a few days, and I was unsure of a couple business things I had happening here. And I initially gotten there Friday, and I was supposed to fly back, I think Tuesday morning. And some stuff like over the weekend was kind of bubbling up, and I was like, I don't know. Like, it's been a phenomenal trip, and I'm being distracted by this. I need some peace of mind. And I ended up buying a flight on Monday afternoon that would get me home Monday night. And I remember going to the airport, and I had pulled up my phone, and I was like giving them my boarding pass, and I had pulled up the wrong boarding pass. And the woman was like, sir, you have a flight tomorrow. And I was like, no, sorry, I got this flight. And she was like, you have two flights? And I booked two flights. I booked literally two flights, one of which was first class home. And so the flight I took home was Monday because things were bubbling up and I needed to go. Yeah. And, I remember when I would have felt really braggadocious about even saying that and kind of like held it in. But I think it's an important part of the story, right? It's not about the points. It's not about the refunds. It's not about the 18%. It's not about that. It's about changing the way that we see the landscape so that we can say yes more often. I was in Charleston. Charleston was an amazing trip, a little getaway. And I got invited to do this like water flying a day after I was supposed to leave.
Wow.
I'm changing my flight. And I was on water, man. It was awesome. It was like snowboarding on water, and it was like flying and surfing, all the same thing. It was amazing, right? But I got to say yes to that because I didn't have to worry about like, well, this is going to cost me $300 to change my flight. Like, change it. I'm in.
Right.
And, I've been able to do like snowboarding trips, and Greece was absolutely incredible. I've done so many of them, and it all kind of blurs together. I mean, I did Montreal, Austin, San Francisco, LA, Boston, Charleston, Florida, like all these different places. And I think so much of them blend together because it's just part of my story, right? Where again, most people are like, I went to Greece and that was my year. That was my trip. That was my one. And I'm like, I just want to be present in the spaces that I am. And I can just take down more barriers through travel hacking and say yes more frequently.
That ayahuasca, man, taught you some things.
It did.
I'll bet.
Definitely did.
Been toying with that. We'll see. It's for another discussion, I guess. But many have said, hey, you got to do it. You got to do it. So we'll see what happens. But all right. So let's, we got about 12 minutes before the top of the hour. So let's talk about, I want to talk about Ortis Academy. So you, again, have a huge passion for financial education. So you created Ortis. I think that's where travel hacking is sort of the gateway for you to spend time with Ortis, or maybe I'm wrong with that. But just talk about what it is, why you do it. Give us some sense of it, especially for any of us that are parents and we know how important financial education is. Give us the overview of Ortis, and then we can get a little deeper on it.
Yeah, man. I'm always happy to talk about this. We believe that in order to have a meaningful life, whatever that means to you, a meaningful life, you've got to have financial intelligence. And we say financial intelligence over literacy because it incorporates, you got to understand the mechanics of money, absolutely. But you also have to understand that habits and emotions play into financial behaviors. And understanding that's really different than just being like quote unquote literate, right? Just because you can read doesn't mean you can, synthesize an idea. The real methodology that we have is we've sportified a little deeper than gamified financial decision making, and we've coupled that with some online interactive lessons that really help individuals, kids, typically ages 10 to 18, interact with money differently and make choices, right? So we love in this country, we love to be like, everybody makes logical decisions with their money and they make the best and most sound investments with their choices. And like, it's just not true. We are completely emotional. And, the purpose of our business is to radically solve some of these bigger problems. Like the stats I can throw out at you are like numbing, right? So one in three families are 2 paychecks away from being homeless. Right. And we love to point at these stats and be like, well, that's because of all these issues. And I certainly can't say that like we can break this down into like a singular point, but if you look at the root of it, you're throwing somebody into the real world and you're giving them an archaic education and expecting them to live in a modern timeline. And what we're doing is modernizing this, where we're taking away this rhetoric, we're taking away this narrative that money is like some kind of thing that you're born with, some kind of innate skill. And we're saying, look, it can be developed, it can be built. And instead of testing you on like terminology with money, we're just going to put you in a simulation where you got to go through 5 years of life choices, and you're going to feel the consequences. And here's what happens in real life, right? As adults, we make a choice and we're like, fuck, that was a bad choice. And then we're like, I'm not doing that anymore. Definitely not. Or I'm going to like learn from it and get some more research in. And what we're doing is we're giving that opportunity to people, it will soon be adults too, to experience that consequence early. So they're like, that wasn't a great choice. I should evaluate this first before I do it in real life. And you know, the impact of this is way, way prior to where we are, because we're working with kids when they're young, and we're watching light bulbs start to flicker and brighten. And a lot of the conversation is about, you know, how do we make this required? If it's not required, how do we get and penetrate markets that just get this pretty ubiquitous? How do we find parents so that they can buy it directly? If schools don't buy it, like, you know, we're building something of impact and of meaning. And, you know, I think we're onto something hot where, you know, we're now going out raising capital, we're doing all this stuff. But what we hear like time and time again is like, I wish I would have had this as a kid. And we, you know, we're consistently in schools working with kids and teachers. And like 2 weeks ago, we just finished a program where a teacher came up and was like, yo, I've been sitting in the back of the room taking notes. And I went home and I built a budget, and I talked to my wife and we did this, and this. And like, now my money landscape is better. Right? This is a teacher. And that to me, again, it comes down to the same thing with travel hacking. Like, if I can uplift others, I'm happy. That's where I'm fulfilled. And to be able to do everything that I do, travel hacking, I coach youth soccer, I do business coaching, I do Ortis. And to do those things consistently, and that's my lifestyle, that also keeps me afloat and provides for me financially, is such an amazing gift, right? Where I can do this. And, you know, I'm excited for what we can do. Yeah. I'm excited to front run it and to go first in a category that I think is quite underwhelming. And it's been really boring. It's like a banker in a brown suit with a brown tie and brown hair and brown glasses coming in and being like, let's talk about compound interest. Like, look, I don't want to talk about compound interest. I want to talk about how you earn money. Let's have you pitch to a problem that I'm facing, because you're 10. You don't even know about compound interest. You need to know about how to earn, right? Interest is a theme you need to understand, but like, how many people know about the rule of 72? Like, that's not, we're talking about practical stuff.
Right. Right. So this is an interactive event, like a game, I guess, right? That the kids can play, or even adults can play to really understand just how money works, the flow of money, all of the, like you said, that the rules around money that are not taught in traditional. So I'm curious, like, I'm reading this book right now. I don't know if you ever read it, called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon.
Oh, I haven't.
Yeah, it's a great book. It's Napoleon Hill, of course, wrote Think and Grow Rich. This was written in the 30s, but published only in the last 5 or 10 years because it's, I guess, controversial in the 30s. Although, I don't know, I didn't live in the 30s, so reading it, I don't see the controversy. But anyway, very, very hard on the education system in the book, even then in the 30s, and it speaks a little bit about that, about the fact that, you know, there's just not a good platform generally in our public school system for how we educate our kids, but also that there's not a good financial blueprint for kids to follow. So why is that? What I don't know, what have you learned is at the heart of why financial education? I think Matt's asking this question. Why isn't personal finance, other than how to balance a checkbook, why is it not taught in schools? Or I don't know if you know, but what do you think?
Okay, I think there's a variety of factors, right? Like, why break the status quo would certainly be one of them. I think that's coming to the forefront, and people are asking more questions about it. So I imagine that larger question will be asked at a deeper level sometime in the near future. But yeah. I also think that like, it has been taught. It's just been shit. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Like, one, I don't have any kids, but if I had a kid, I don't want my like math teacher teaching my kid money. They haven't been trained in that.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want the English teacher being like, hey, here's how you make a bunch of money,
Right.
you know, and that doesn't necessarily need to be the rhetoric. It doesn't need to be the here's how you make a bunch of money, but certainly here's how you can live sustainably. It should be part of this conversation. But, you know, if you look at the way it could be taught, if you look at the way most of education is, it's like, just get through it. And money is here, right? It operates in our value core, and it stems from a different ideology. And getting someone in school to teach it is, you know, it's as valuable as yellow snow. And I think the narrative around this has to change, because you need companies like Ortis Academy to say, look, we're going to find some experts to really build out content and build this the right way, rather than we're going to just dump this on teachers and say, like, do it. So many problems are coming from this in the first place, but we're also not testing in a way that's education oriented, right? We're saying, look, go make a bunch of choices. We're going to evaluate them. We're going to rank your financial decision-making ability. Then we're going to teach you a bunch. Then we're going to test you again. And that's a real model. That's why we say sportify, not gamify, because it's like you're iterating and you're coaching and practicing and training for another game, you know, and this idea of changing the landscape has to, when it comes to an emotional subject matter, right? Decisions people make with their money, it has to come from the core of what is happening in here when I'm feeling and going through this. Otherwise, it doesn't work. You can tell somebody 1,000 times, you should be investing money. You should be investing money. You should be investing money. It's not going to work.
Right.
Just teach them how to automate it, right? So you can take that away. Or look, if you're like, okay, we want to talk about, you know, personality types or spending habits, right? The kid that might buy a pair of shoes every week, it's a deeper issue than just like, you have enough money, right? That kid is searching for validation and attention. I know, because I did it. My closet will prove it.
Right.
Like, it was the validation and the emotional buy-in that I got from the attention. And if we're really going to change the conversation when it comes to money in schools, we've got to first start with, you know, what is happening with most of our money as adults, and how do we like reverse engineer a solution for kids? And I think we spend a lot of time asking those questions so that we can build something that is a staircase to the right place, rather than just, you know, random paths on a field of nodes.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And, you know, this worries me. I wonder if just some comments from folks out there that are parents or maybe plan to be parents, if it's something on your mind. I'm just curious more than anything, but somebody says they took a personal finance class last semester. They opened a mutual fund with that. So I guess that's promising. You know, that's a good sign, right, in the right direction. But
start.
Yeah, but learning more and more about money is so important. It's something that's really impactful to me. And even in that regard, like when I think about mutual funds, you know, I wonder if it was an index fund, because there's so much loaded that, not to criticize the education, but there's so many layers to financial education that I think sometimes we can get lost in the matrix a little bit with what to do, right? You should invest here, you should invest there, and we don't know exactly what's coming with that. So, well,
and look, you know, Jamie, I think an important element of this is like, we also have to recognize that most financial advisors, people managing our money, have incentive to make decisions in interest other than our own.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, there's now this new fiduciary rule, but there's ways around it. And, you know, I think when I think about my future and legacy and all that, I want to look at this problem that is like facing us and be like, I at least went after that. Yeah. And a lot of times the first person through the door gets shot when it comes to solving problems and tackling big issues. But I think looking at what could come from embedding this in a culture early, right, with 10, 11, 12-year-olds, is that we end up with entrepreneurs. Like, I may not end up a 10 billionaire person with $10 billion, but I might teach the person that does. Yeah. And I might teach the person that then says, okay, if being an entrepreneur is really solving problems, I'm going to go after this problem. Or, you know, a variety of things that really bleed out from this like dropping this gigantic rock in this ocean. But it's very frustrating that this isn't something that's commonplace to talk about. And look, a lot of adults don't know this either. Like I said, a lot of people sit in and they're like, whoa, dude, I'm blown away by this, man. I never thought about it like that. And I think we're just really good. We've got a really good team that we sit down and take these really big themes, right? Like, what is earning? Most of us, like, we couldn't break that down, but we break it down so well. It's that a kid can be like, oh, dope. I get that. Yeah, I totally get that. I can do that. And one of my favorite Einstein quotes is, if you can't explain something to a child, you don't understand it.
Right.
And I think that's a big part of our mission, is to find people that understand something at a really deep level, pass it on.
I completely agree. And it is 9 o'clock. I want to be respectful of your time and everything. I could go on for hours. I could talk about entrepreneurship with you. I could talk about more about the financial education, the specifics of Ortus, all of that good stuff. What is Ortus? Why is it called that? I mean, but let's do this. So how can people find out more about you, find out more about the travel hacking? Where can you direct folks to learn more about the Aaron Velky brand?
That's a great question. So you can go to my website, aaronvelky.com. My Instagram is IamVelky, Velky. Let me post a link in the chat box for the travel hacking course, and I'll send it your way as well. So there's a link to the travel hacking course. I also am open to people like contacting me directly. So if they want to find me, my website has plenty of links to me, but my email is asvelky@gmail. For your audience, I'm happy to be responsive.
Great. Thank you for that. Yeah.
I think if people are interested in travel hacking, I think I would implore you to think through, are you after it for like the glitz and the glamour, or are you actually after a lifestyle change? It's easy to be like, I want a free flight. I'm into that. I can help you with that. But I certainly like, our community is really based on people that want to change their lifestyle. So I invite anybody that comes into it to really have a handle on that. And then if they want to find us, www.ortusacademy.com. You can sign up for our email list and stay tuned. We're going to be offering a beta to some parents, some schools. So if people want to sign up for the beta, they can just join our email list there. We're always looking for support and investors and things like that want to be a part of the mission, part of the impact and the ripple. So they can certainly reach out to me for that as well. But look, I'm just grateful for your time, for their time, for you guys tuning in, and can't find any more way to express my gratitude other than to say thank you, man.
Absolutely. No, thank you for this. And Ortus, to be clear, ORTUS, correct?
Correct. Yeah, ORTUS.
Academy is where you can find it. No, this was great, man. Like I said, some folks ask like, oh, it's an interesting topic for this group, but like I said before, lifestyle is the root of every investor I've ever talked to. It's what we aspire to, and I just hear too many people talking about achieving lifestyle goals later, once they've achieved some sort of financial goal within real estate. So I think it's important to know that there's options out there. There are travel hacking courses out there, but the one that you put together, and you made the point very, very well, is focused on lifestyle. The community is focused on lifestyle. It's, yes, you get the tactics, you get the techniques, you get all of that stuff, but it's truly focused on, what do you want to do? Where do you want to be? Who do you want to be? As opposed to just, here's what you do and you get this many points. So.
Well, look, let me add one more point that I think has been coming up pretty consistently in my life that it might be of value to you guys listening. I think we love to try to get to a particular point in our lives before we really start exploring what the world has to offer, what makes us happy, what fulfills us. And I'm really proud of what I've been able to do just in living through purpose and making a lifestyle out of it. But I always question individuals that are like, well, I'll do it when. Because we love to think of this like I'm going to get there and then I'm going to, do this, do that, do that. And whether it's like spend time with your family or go on vacation or see the world, there is no there. There's never going to be a place where you're like, I'm finally here. Now I can do it. And whether it be travel hacking or Ortus Academy or any of my other ventures, like it's all about now and being present here. And I would encourage all of you guys at home to really think through like the release of there so that you can live in now. And it doesn't mean like go out and blow your whole bank account. I recognize that we all have investments that we're chasing in growth, and we want to find ways to build a lifestyle and be happy. But sometimes the things that we most deeply want are already in front of us. You don't need $1 million to have breakfast with your kid. You don't need $1 million to go see the world. You don't need, to be uber successful before you can spend time with those that you love on their wedding day, whether it's far or close, right? Those things are deeply meaningful to me. And I think if I can be a catalyst for you to question that, so that the narrative of your life isn't, well, when I get there, then I'll do it, right? I want to be a front runner for, like, look, you can run, you can jump, you can laugh, you can smile at any point, especially when you're young. Those things are easier. But waiting until you get there, when there is no there, is a big risk, and one that I don't think enough people are talking about.
Amazing. I agree completely. It's about the journey, right? It's about the journey. The destination is never fulfilling. It is for a minute. I shouldn't say never. It is for a minute, but then you're back on the journey. So the journey is what it's all about. I've said that a million times. Christmas is fun leading up to it. Then you open the presents, and then it's all of a sudden, it's winter and it's cold outside, right? At least I completely agree, man. This was great. Spitting fire tonight, as always. I love the way you go about this. Very natural. It's a fantastic topic, and you're really, to me, you're just leveling up, the guests that we've had on here, and you're making it difficult for the next couple. So awesome job, man. I appreciate it. To all of you out there, thanks for watching. Next couple of months, we've got some really great guests. Gino Barbaro up next month, if you know him from Jake and Gino, multifamily owner. After that, we have Matt Aitchison, Matty A, he's known as the six-figure flipper. Really, really great guy. Aaron, I think you know him pretty well. So we've got, a great lineup of guests starting with tonight, even the last couple that we've had. So really, really excited about that. Aaron, really, really appreciative of you coming on tonight. And man, thanks again. And we'll talk soon.
Dude, Jamie, thank you for having me. Thank you guys for tuning in. And again, if I can be of service, just let me know.
Absolutely. All right, brother. We'll talk soon.
See you.
See you guys.